Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to be doing a review of some of the new things that have come to Azur Lane in the last couple weeks. Now, I know a lot of you are very excited about the upcoming US event where we will be getting the secondary versions of rebuilt US ships, such as Yorktown 2 and Hornet 2. And don't worry, tomorrow I will be spending most of my day making that data mine for you guys. But before that, we have some things I have to go over first. The last 2 weeks have brought us 2 minor updates. And while I don't always cover every minor update with a video, these 2 updates actually bring some meta-defining changes, and thus we have to cover them before we get to the next update this week. So we'll go in chronological order and start with the December 8th update. This update brought us 1 new ship, and it's the only new ship since the last event. It is Arizona Meta, and many of you have probably already been fighting her in Operation Siren. Stat-wise, she looks very similar to her base ship Arizona. Her stats are slightly increased over her base. However, the only thing of consequence is the extra 29 firepower. The weapon efficiencies are exactly the same, so let's look at the skills. The original Arizona was a battleship healer, the first of her kind. She also recently got an Augment Module that significantly improved her skill. Arizona Meta, on the other hand, has a little bit of a different vibe. Let's take a look at skill number 1. This skill allows her to deploy a jamming field. While enemies are in the jamming field, they not only take 20% more damage, but also have their speed decreased by 80%. And that slow continues to linger for 3 seconds after they have left the field. This is a really good skill. It's actually really interesting. It's unique. It's something that a lot of the bosses will actually drop on you, and now it's going to be kind of fun to drop it on them instead. Skill number 2 is called No More Tears, and it's a play off the original ship's first skill. It's meant to kind of pair with another healer, such as Arizona. When another ship in the fleet heals more than 5% of its HP, Arizona Meta will heal 5% of her HP and fire a barrage. The second part of this skill occurs once per battle when any ship takes more than 30% of its HP in a single shot of damage or drops below 30% of its total HP. This will activate another jamming field for 3 seconds, similar to the first skill, and releases another barrage. A lot of barrages is characteristic of meta ships. And even her third skill still packs a punch. When her secondary guns fire, so not her main gun, there is a 70% chance that she gets to fire them twice. So it's almost like an auxiliary gun plus 1, only 70% of the time though. However, the second part of this skill is more impactful. She increases the reload of all of your ships with Framework of Logic skill, which is effectively the skill that all the meta ships get for Operation Siren. So any meta ship is going to get extra reload. That is a huge faction buff. Additionally, she's going to increase her firepower by 10%. That's nice. But finally, she also gets a salvo proccing skill. When she fires her main gun, if you have a ship in your fleet with Pearl Tears equipped, there's a 50% chance to restore 6% of max HP to the ship in your vanguard with the lowest remaining health. So she becomes a healer as long as Pearl Tears is in the fleet. This is awesome and stays on theme with her healing. So basically, she is significantly better than base Arizona all across the board. In fact, she's really powerful for a meta ship. This is definitely different than a lot of the past meta ships. She's a lot better. I wouldn't say she's the best meta ship to be released. I still think Helena Meta is probably the best meta ship to be released, but she's probably ranked 2 or 3. Very powerful, and if you are into collecting meta ships, I think you need to be playing Operation Siren for this season. She is actually very good, and I think it's only fitting that Arizona comes back as a meta version of herself, and that version is one of the most powerful meta ships in the game. Mind you, because of the Framework of Logic skill, meta ships are primarily going to be used in Operation Siren. They're not going to be used in PvP or even a lot of PvE content. But if you want to use Operation Siren, you want to have a meta fleet, Arizona is going to be something you're going to want to put in your meta fleet. Overall, I like what they did with her. Her power level was just above what we've seen so far, which makes sense given her history. Oh, and did I mention that she was released on December 8th, but that specific time? So she was actually released on December 7th, Pearl Harbor time. Also, along with a new meta ship, this update brought us a lot of new gears. They came specifically in the Gear Lab. This was an Operation Siren update. These changes were heavily skewed towards anti-air guns. However, we're going to talk about some of the older equipment that we've already had that got added as permanent equipment to the Gear Lab. The French got a whole new section to the Gear Lab. Previously, it had only been the 4 major factions. France is now the 5th faction to be added to the Gear Lab. In addition, they're also going to get tech equipment boxes, so you can now randomly get the French guns by just opening boxes. So part of what bringing France to the Gear Lab brings us is some good guns that have already been in the game that are now permanently available content. For example, the 138.6mm destroyer gun is one of the best destroyer guns in the game, still currently, depending on the type of content you're going for, and previously it had been locked to an event. Now they had added it to the War Archive, and you could have grinded that, and I have done that to get extra copies for myself, but that was tedious and limited to 4 per day. Now you can craft them through Operation Siren. This is a lot more friendly for newer players to pick up this gun, and I do recommend they still do that. Additionally, some of the better heavy cruiser guns are also French and event locked or locked behind research. Both of these are now available in the Gear Lab, and while they are starting to get power creeped by some of the better equipment that is coming out now, they are still very palatable options for doing all of PvE content currently in the game. Now, before I finish up talking about France, let's talk about other equipment that is already in the game that now is in the Gear Lab. Most notably, on the thumbnail, the 457 is now here. That was one of the biggest pains in PR2 to get. It did come to the Protocore shop, but you could only purchase 1 per account forever, and now we are going to be able to just craft them easily in the Gear Lab. This is amazing for newer players who want to get access to this gun. This is one of the best guns in the game. It is the best barrage gun for battleships. Still is, even all these years later. I mean, PR6 is only like 6 months away at this point, and yet the PR2 gun is still pretty much best in slot in almost all forms of content. Definitely need to make these. Now, you're going to need a new type of material to actually craft them, so you will have to get those, but outside of that, you will be able to make as many as you want now. You're not going to be limited 1 per account. This is fantastic for anyone who isn't working on PR2, they want to work on the new PR ships, and they need more than just 1 that's limited per their account through the Protocore shop, because, you know, maybe they have a triple battleship backline. They can actually craft the rest here. So this is actually probably pretty good. I will say this, I was surprised. I did not think they were going to do this, so they definitely pulled a fast one on me, but it wouldn't be the first time they pulled a fast one on us this month, now is it? Now, the other guns that have been added to the Gear Lab that have already existed are mostly rares and elites, and they're not really that important to talk about or meta defining. However, what is meta defining is a new rainbow level AA gun. We've been asking this for a while now because there has been no way to use your anti-air gun UR plates that you have been obtaining through OpSci gameplay since the beginning. So I have a bunch of these loaded up. I already bought mine. And this AA gun, the twin 57mm Bofors MLE 1951, so post World War II, is the highest DPS for anti-air guns in the game flat, period. It's also the only anti-air gun that will give you a base 65 anti-air stat instead of the traditional 45. Now, with that in mind, is this anti-air gun the best anti-air gun in the game? Well, that depends, because anti-air is complicated. It does have the largest DPS, and it does have the largest stat boost, but it doesn't have the largest damage per shot, nor is it the fastest reload of any anti-air gun. It also doesn't give any ancillary stats outside of anti-air. These all lead to the "it depends, maybe not" answer. For example, anti-air is not even that important. It's kind of like a hurdle you have to clear rather than something you need to min-max all the way. Most content just requires a base level of anti-air to get through it, and then any more is just overkill. PvP literally has 4 times plane health, so it's not even that important in it. So anti-air guns that boost other stats outside of anti-air are sometimes seen as better, despite them being worse guns all around outside the other stat boosts. This would be the Bofors Stag for hit stat, or the twin 134mm for firepower. Those are very important stats, especially on certain ships, and thus those are still going to be used primarily for most content, even though there's a better anti-air gun out there. And we already have anti-air guns much better than those two guns, and those are still the two most popular. Additionally, the way that anti-air works is that you average all of the reloads together between all the ships in your fleet, and then each of them basically adds their own damage based on the modifiers of the anti-air gun and the, stats of the ship. So this is why a lot of people will tell you when they're building a fleet to take your best anti-air ships and put on the highest damage dealing anti-air gun, even if it's very slow, and then on your bad anti-air gun ships, put on the fastest reload anti-air guns, even if they're very weak. This allows you to average a pretty decent speed, but still do a lot of damage. If you know how fast the enemy planes are flying, you can actually determine how long they will cross your screen and potentially get 2 shots in the anti-air gun circle. This strategy very much focuses on the damage per shot rather than the overall anti-air DPS. And that is still the sextuple Bofors. That does 150 damage per shot, whereas this new UR AA gun does only 132, which is actually very good. So with that in mind, you might still use the sextuple Bofors over this new Twin 57 Bofors on your best anti-air gun ship. However, if you just need anti-air stat to reduce the amount of incoming aviation damage you're going to take, the new URA gun is worth it. I would recommend picking up 3, but I don't think you're going to need 6 for all of your ships. I don't think it's necessarily always the best to use. I think a lot of cases you're going to want the hit stat from the stag, especially on your backliners. You're going to use the sextuple on your largest and best anti-air gun ship, and then the other 2, maybe 3 ships, you're going to use this new URAA gun. So yes, definitely pick it up. It's definitely pretty good, but not like I have to deck out my whole fleet with this new gun. As far as the new CA gun we're going to get, which is the triple 203mm Mark 10, it is going to be actually one of the better HE CA guns. It's actually kind of a side grade to the twin 203mm MLE 1931, which is the best HE CA gun in the game. So if you want to craft it, it's fine. It is kind of a hefty investment, especially if you already have those heavy cruiser guns that I was mentioning earlier, but this is not something bad to craft if you are newer and you just need high explosive ammo heavy cruiser gun. It's about the same power level as the other French version of this gun, but this British version of the gun is going to have a little bit different pattern to its bullets, so pick your preference on the bullet pattern. So up until this point, if you think I've been a little wishy-washy on best in slot equipment designations, that is going to end with this next equipment, the Vought XF5U Flying Flapjack, also known as the Pancake, is the best fighter in the game. It has 2 1,000-pound bombs, only shared by the Sea Hornet and the Tiger Cat. It has a little bit slower launch time than those 2 planes, so it will actually launch a little bit slower, but keep in mind it's very marginal, and this gets averaged out across your whole aviation strike force for that carrier. So it will likely only be about 1/10 of a second on launch time while fully maxed. Because the payloads are the same, the damage is the same, the reload is slightly different, so it will have slightly lower DPS, but that doesn't actually matter in actual combat. However, the new Flying Pancake is so much better at anti-air and intercepting. It is significantly a better fighter for shooting down planes and for reducing the aviation damage of your opponents. Now, part of the way that this actually happens is because it flies much slower. Now, this can be seen as a downside, especially if you're trying to go into crash damage, but it does have a higher dodge limit than, say, the Sea Hornet, so it should be usually fine. Additionally, if we're going to talk about crash damage, the new Flying Pancake has the highest crash damage of any fighter in the game. So in PvP, it's a pretty good no-brainer. It intercepts and has the most crash damage. I would be hard-pressed to find content in the game where this is not the fighter I'm going to bring. Maybe if I wanted to use rockets against light armor, I would use the German rocket fighter. But if I want any sort of interception from my fighters, this is the way to go. The Corsair is a decent option if you have the VF-17 Pirate Squadron because of its skill. But otherwise, I'm pretty much bringing this if I don't need the rockets. So that's something new and good. Next up, we're getting a new destroyer gun, the twin 137mm Mark I. This gun is not something you're going to put on any destroyer. Its main quality is its long range. Certain battleships require their auxiliary guns to be destroyer guns instead of light cruiser guns. These battleships need destroyer guns with long range so they can actually reach to fire. The only other destroyer gun with a 70 range is the recently added twin 130 prototype 1936 model that came out with PR5. That gun does significantly less damage, mostly because it has normal ammo. This new gun has AP ammo, and it has better modifiers against every ammo type, and it does more damage base. However, it's so much slower. The old gun from PR5, so not really that old, has half the reload time nearly, and thus its DPS is a little bit higher. However, this is once again a battleship auxiliary gun that we're going to be using it on. You're going to use neither of these on any destroyer ever. So the question is, does reload really matter? Are you ever going to be firing 2 shots? If you can do more damage in 1 shot, do you care much if you need more time to reload, especially if it's firing against suicide boats and you can one-shot them? So this is kind of the debate. This is even more of a debate in PvP when it depends on, like, you get multiple shots at the opponent's vanguard now. So these are kind of whether or not you want a bigger one-shot with AP ammo, which can pierce as well, or you want a bunch of smaller shots with normal ammo from the other gun. I'm leaning more towards the one-shot AP ammo, which is this new gun, the Twin 137, but I can't say that it is solely best in slot. You have to play this. I think it's more of a preference thing, whether you want to have a more powerful one shot or a bunch of littler shots. There still is going to be nearly a 2-second reload though, so against a really fast suicide boat, you might not even get the second shot off anyway. So it really also comes down to the type of content you're clearing. I would go with the 137 Twin, which would make it the best in slot battleship auxiliary destroyer gun. It's very specific, but New Jersey is one of those ships, so relevant to the meta. Okay, the last part of this update is the all-timed Fuse AA guns. This was kind of an out-of-nowhere update, but once again plays into the anti-air update we were spoiled with a little bit earlier. This is the cone-shaped long-range anti-air guns. These are already guns that we've had that can be basically upgraded into their long-range forms. This gives them a cone instead of a circle, and they can only be equipped on battleships and their variants, battlecruisers and aviation battleships. Their upgraded versions not only change the pattern of, their circle into a cone, but it also increases their damage per wave and decreases their fire rate. So more damage and longer to reload. The only new gun that has this option that I would consider is the twin 134mm time fused AA gun. This one has the firepower boost, and that's the main reason why we're considering it. You could put this on a battleship that needs that firepower. However, I'd still prefer the stack. Even though you're able to do a little bit extra damage, you're not going to be able to shoot twice, which you could if you were to use really fast reload guns, maybe like that UR AA gun that we were talking about earlier. So as a whole, I would argue that the lot of these 4 are not really worth the investment. Sure, you could take the twin 134 one and play around with it and see if you can time it up where you get the extra damage and stuff, but I still find it hard to believe that any strategy with one of these long-range anti-air guns currently released will be better than the sextuple on your best anti-air gun ship and the Bofors stags on all of your backlines that need it. The new UR gun is not time fused and definitely could make its way into a lot of fleets. It's very good, but I don't see these long-range anti-air guns making it into many fleets at this time unless they change the mechanic or they release more guns with the time fuse mechanic, most notably the Bofors Stag, or maybe the sextuple Bofors. But at this point, if you want to skip this, you're probably all right. All right, that was the whole update for the December 8th maintenance. Now let's move on to the December 15th maintenance. This one was even smaller. It brought us 1 new equipment and 5 new Augment modules. The new snow globe item you can gain from the login mini event. Is it any good? Not really. It's a purple equipment. It has less HP than the repair toolkit and does not have any effective in-game skill, such as the repair toolkit, which literally heals you on top of having a higher base HP stat boost. Yes, it does give some luck, but like 2 luck, what's that gonna do you? The reason to get this item is for its strictly aesthetic purpose. When equipped on Anchorage, and Anchorage only, it creates a snowy landscape. This obviously is not meta related and does not matter, but if you want to have a snowy landscape, you can do that. I don't know why they didn't make it work on any ship. That would have been much cooler and much more desirable. The fact I have to place it on Anchorage sucks. Means I have to get Anchorage, which obviously I already do, but who wants to put 475 HP and 2 luck on Anchorage? Like, she needs evasion. She doesn't need HP, man. You do not need to put the snow globe on her. But I guess it's for aesthetic purposes only. I would have wished that I could put it on any ship and then I could just like throw it on. Like, I'd be worth to take a little extra HP from a destroyer to get some cool effects. Like, that's fine, but I'm not going to put it on Anchorage. I don't know. I think this item is very close to being very cool. I like when they program in aesthetic changes to equipments, but having it be locked to only Anchorage kind of sucks, not gonna lie. 2 of them are kind of rubbish, so I'll go through them very quickly. Nagara was already a trash ship. 30 extra firepower and 25 extra hit, as well as a slash barrage, is not going to change that. Also, she gets an update to her full firepower skill. This just adds a chance that she gets a heal and some extra anti-air. Still low chance, still slow, still bad. Wichita gets 35 firepower and 25 hit, as well as a slash attack. Her new skill upgrade will give her an increased enhanced barrage, as well as 20% self-evasion buff. That last part is generally seemed as the best part of this new augment module. Wichita is definitely a very squishy ship, and this will help, but probably not enough. Albacore actually got a pretty decent augment module. 35 torpedo stat and 20 hit stat is something that any submarine is going to like. She also got 10% increase to her torpedo crit hit rate. That is awesome. That's a fantastic upgrade. And now she's going to increase her skill that when she resurfaces and leaves the battle, she's going to fire a barrage. And those barrage now have a 100% chance to inflict a special burn instead of 70%. More consistency, more damage, more crit rate. I like it. I like it. I like it. Very simple, but very good for a submarine. Z-23 is the 3rd starter ship to get an augment module. We've already seen Laffy's, which was just okay. And we've seen Ainami's, which was fantastic. Z-23's was somewhere in the middle. She gets 32 firepower and 200 HP, that's nice, as well as a slash attack. And for her skill upgrade, she gets a 10% boost to her self main gun efficiency. That's really good. She is a firepower damage dealing destroyer, and since she doesn't have a main gun +1 like all the other top tier firepower damage dealing destroyers, this is going to go a long way in helping increase that damage. It's actually better than a firepower boost because it doesn't get modified. She also takes 8% less damage. So just kind of straight easy. 8% less damage, 10% more damage dealt from her firepower gun, 200 extra HP and some extra firepower and a slash. Is it going to make her meta? No, not really. She never really was in the first place, but this helps. As with all augment modules, their specific ones are usually going to be the best in slot. So all of these, if you're using that ship, you should get the augment module. That's pretty much the recommendation I will always make. If you're using the ship and it has an augment module, use it. And I finally saved the best for last, and that is Hood's augment module. Man, did she get justice here. First up, what battleship is not going to like 35 firepower and 11 hit stat? Additionally, she gets a 30% boost to her auxiliary gun efficiency. She already had a very low auxiliary gun efficiency because she's a very old ship. So this just kind of brings her back to the level that she's going to need against those World 14 suicide boats, which are bulky. Now, when she fires her main gun, there is a 100% chance for her to activate her skill instead of 70% chance. I cannot begin to tell you how much nicer that is specifically for Hood. Of course, she will fire a barrage. This barrage gets enhanced. The modifiers are significantly better after the augment module. It almost doubles the damage she does against light armor enemies, which is great for mobbing, where she probably will be. And obviously, the main reason a lot of people used Hood was the 40% reduction to the reload stat. Of course, reload stat doesn't scale very nicely, so it's a small cooldown reduction, reduction, but it is still notable at 40% reload for 8 seconds. And that skill was never able to be timed. A lot of times you would like finagle your fleet to time it perfectly, and then Hood wouldn't proc and you'd have to restart or something garbage like that. This takes away all of that RNG. You're just going to know exactly that it will proc. You know exactly when it will proc based on what gun you put on her. You can actually finagle that with what you determine her loadout will be, and then you can time it to be perfect, reduce the cooldown that you need, and have everything line up timing nice. Is Hood going to be best in slot? No, but this augment module makes one of the oldest and beloved ships very usable again. Like, you could take her into World 14 mob fleeting, definitely. She can definitely help you out there. She'll have the reload like buff. She'll have a good barrage for all of those. She definitely can be used now with this augment module, and that is awesome. Freaking Hood, dude, let's go. Yeah, she got a really good update here. All right, guys, that is all the updates for the last 2 weeks, so we are all caught up, and thought I would give you the reviews of the updates we have right before we get into our next UR event, so definitely keep your eye out for that. Thank you guys for watching. Take care, and until next time,